the progress of Texas depended on development, economic development, demographic development. And looking south, Tejanos confronted a Mexico that had just experienced a 10-year war of independence, in which Tejanos themselves had participated, but that's another talk. You can invite me back for another history day when we can talk about that issue. But what they found, and when they looked south, was a Mexico that was not capable of supplying the resources necessary for that development. And so they turned eastward. They turned toward the United States, where in the course of the previous half a century, they had found relationships with Frenchmen, increasingly with Anglo-Americans, with French Americans. After the Louisiana Purchase, the establishments of regular, if often contraband trade relations with Louisiana, that allowed them to see in Anglo-American settlement the possibility for that development that couldn't come from the South. So Tejanos actively supported, they engaged, and I'm going to put in a plug for my book, which not only on November 16th at ACC Riverside Campus, but also this Sunday at 1:30 at the Texas Book Festival will be featured. It's called Tejano Leadership in Mexican and Revolutionary Texas. There will be a panel discussion with some of my co-authors in the book, and then there'll be a book signing afterwards. So if you can't make November 16th at ACC, maybe you can be down at the book festival this Sunday, and I hope to see some of you there. That was the commercial intermission. So back to the story. I've only got a couple of minutes, but let me say that in bringing Stephen F. Austin to Texas, Stephen F. Austin had the support, he had the partnership of a number of Tejanos. Erasmo Seguin, who went to Louisiana to bring Stephen F. Austin back to Texas, along with Juan Martín Beramendi. Jose Antonio Navarro, who became one of Austin's business partners. Jose Antonio Salcedo, who was the chief administrative official who taught Stephen F. Austin the law and who guided him in making sure that the colony that he was establishing on the Colorado River, south of here, the first one, stayed within the new Mexican legal system. So from the very beginning, Tejanos were full-blown participants in the establishment of this new Texas that was coming into being in the 1820s and 1830s. And part of that was the land. The Tejanos themselves, many of them, had received land grants along the San Antonio River, some of them along the, between the San Antonio and the Guadalupe. But because there were so few of them, they had not been able to take advantage of the rich landed resources that Texas had to offer. And that's what they offered the Anglo-American settlers. That's what they offered Stephen F. Austin. That's what they helped to bring about, that landed settlement of Texas that takes place between 1821 and 1835 when the Revolution breaks out. And one of the most interesting aspects of that is that Stephen F. Austin himself saw the future of Travis County. He not only included Travis County in the third of the 5 contracts that he made with the Mexican government. It's called the Little Colony, and it went from Bastrop all the way out here on the Colorado River beyond, a little bit beyond Austin, on the north side of the river. But he actually came through the area and surveyed for himself what he was going to make his retirement home. And guess where it was? Mount Bunnell. He surveyed the area, and he called them the mountains, because obviously this is what passes for mountains around here. If you're going west from the Mississippi River, this is about as high as it gets until you hit the mountains out in West Texas. So these are the mountains for him. But he surveyed that area, and so ironically, people had lost that information. It wasn't well known, and so when Austin was named, it was named without regard to the fact that Stephen F. Austin himself had seen this as his future home. South of the river Another luminary in revolutionary period Texas history, Benjamin Milam, had already gotten a contract from the Mexican government, and he was busy settling it. He brought people like the area of town where I live. I live between William Cannon and Slaughter Lane. And William Cannon and Stephen Slaughter were both grantees under Benjamin Milam, because his contract was to bring settlers in south of the Colorado River, in what is today what I like to refer to, following Kelso, Bubba Land, which is where I live, and the part of town I really appreciate. So from that early period, from that 1820s period, already people were beginning to see, long before the town was established by Lamar, after his buffalo hunt and all of that, long before that, there was a perception that this area had something to offer, that its waterways, the Colorado River in this area, Barton Creek, the other creeks in this area, provided abundant resources, that the buffalo that annually visited the area were, of course, you know, that's one of the other low points, right? One of the other honest things that we have to face is what we did to nature. And in the process of building successful farms and successful cattle ranches, we had to kill off the buffalo. And that's what we did. But Travis County regularly had herds of thousands and hundreds of thousands of animals coming through it. And often, although it's harder and harder to do these days, I'm out of time. It's harder and harder to do these days as I travel down the road to San Marcos, and there are still these little gaps between the Kohl's and the Targets and the H-E-B's, where I try to visualize that Texas, that natural Texas, with herds of buffalo and with springs and tall grasses, and it's something that we need to remember. It's something that, although it's largely gone, and I make jokes about it now, life goes on, we progress, but we shouldn't forget those beginnings. And that Stephen F. Austin could see the future of this area. He could see that Mount Bunnell was a special place. That Benjamin Milam started settling people here in the early 1830s. That Lamar himself could come to this area and in the middle of a buffalo hunt say, this is the perfect place for a capital of the nation. And it was a nation then. Tells us that we've got a pretty special place here in Travis County. So I encourage you to visit the land office, where a lot of this material and this history I learned, where it's visible to you. What's out there is just a tip of the iceberg in terms of the documentary evidence. And I encourage you to remember that history is the foundations for civics, and that facing up to it and putting it all together in a way that brings all groups' stories into the picture can only help to make us stronger and better and support education. Thank you very much.